through the. Thank you. We don't need to start over, do we? So we read
No.
the meeting
No,
thing
that's-
and I forgot to click to start on the recording. Sorry. So
Yeah, no, it'll be reflected in the minutes that the meeting started. Insignificant. There was no business transacted.
corrected. And this is just for the audio. This is the select board meeting for Monday, June 7th, 2021. First is to acknowledge payroll warrant number 2126 dated 5/27 in the amount of $296,164.70. Acknowledge payables warrant number 2129B dated 6/1/2021 in the amount of $143,161.96. And I'd entertain a motion for the open session minutes of May 24th.
Joe Didi will make that motion.
Russ Fox will second it.
It's a roll call vote. Doug Moglen, aye.
Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
And for a moment we've all been waiting for, at this time, I'd like to propose that we reorganize the select board. And I would entertain a motion for chair.
Russ Fox will make a motion to nominate Joe Didi for chair of the select board.
Second,
I thought it was fine like it was, but
that's a roll call vote. Doug Moglen, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
I'll abstain.
Joe, you were breaking up. We couldn't hear you. By the way, I hereby turn the meeting over to you.
Wonderful. Meeting's adjourned. All right. So next up, I guess we have to get a vice chair. So I'd entertain a motion.
I'd like to nominate Mr. Russ Fox as vice chair.
Joe Didi will second that. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry. Joe Didi, aye.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Russ Fox reluctantly, aye.
Yeah. Okay. Then what do we have left? The clerk's position. So I entertain a motion.
Make a motion to nominate Doug Moglen as clerk.
Joe Didi will second that motion. All those in favor, Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Wonderful. What time is it? 6:05, perfect. So first up, we're gonna do the police department sergeant interviews. I don't
Mr.
know if we're
Didi?
making, yes,
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. I forgot your
okay.
new title. Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, you need to assign members to the Capcom LEPC and
Do we
warrant
really?
signatures delegation.
and you want to be all of that? Okay, that's fine.
No, negative.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I
I'd make
thought
a
I just
motion to assign yourself to the Capcom.
heard. Okay, you want to do them all together? Nope.
I think they're all different. So
Okay. So Joe Didi
Capcom
will,
is, I nominate Joe Didi for Capcom.
Russ Fox will second that nomination.
all those in favor? Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Moglen, aye. The
Yeah.
order's different now. We got to get used to it.
Yes. Okay, warrant signature delegations. Mr. Fox, you've been doing that all along?
Yes, sir.
I
Doing a hell of
nominate
a
Russell
job.
Fox to continue doing a fantastic job on signing the warrants.
Joe Didi will second that. All those in favor? Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Moglen, aye.
All right, authorized chair, CAO for hiring approvals and all other personnel actions below department head level.
Russ Fox will make that motion.
Doug Moglen will second the motion.
All those in favor? Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Moglen, aye.
Wonderful. All right.
Chairman, did you want to address the assignment of the member to the LEPC?
All right, we almost got away with that one. Come on now.
Who's been
Russ
doing that?
Fox will make the motion to nominate Doug Moglen, who's been doing an outstanding job at that position.
He really has, hasn't he? So Joe Didi will second that motion. All those in favor? Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Moglen reluctantly, aye.
Great. Are we good, Carl?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So we'll move on to the sergeant interviews. Sounds good. I don't know if we're gonna make a decision tonight, folks, but we'll do the interviews and we'll talk about it later. It looks like it's further down in our action items.
Yep.
All right. So how's this gonna work there? Mr. Landis in charge?
That's right, gentlemen. The candidates are here, so Officer Arduini's number one on the list. So when you're ready, I'll bring him in.
Bring them on in.
Okay. Shouldn't have to move anything. You go out. Okay. But just you see yourself on the screen there and all live.
I wondered if we were supposed to dress up.
Yes, we had to wear suits.
Well, you look good. That's all that matters.
Thanks.
All right, so we have some questions for you tonight. I believe we'll make a decision later. I really don't know. We haven't talked about it. So if we do, it'll be later in the agenda. And if we don't, it'll be at the next meeting. All right, sir?
Yes, sir.
You understand you've been through this a few times, I take it?
Yes, I have many times.
All right, so we're gonna ask you some questions at the end. We'll give you a couple seconds to make a comment and we'll move on.
Okay.
All right, so first question I have is what are your career goals?
As of tonight, it's getting being promoted to a sergeant. And possibly after that would be in 3 years, looking at a lieutenant spot. And I mean, depending on how long the next lieutenant stays here, possibly a chief. I mean, I only have maximum of 10 years left to work here. So I have to really get on board and get things accomplished as soon as possible.
Understood. I guess my follow-up is, are you out of here as soon as you're allowed to be out of here, or you're gonna stay the whole 10 if you can?
I'm going to stay the whole 10 if I can.
Awesome. You know, some chiefs leave right away. I mean, not that you're a
Yes,
chief,
I know.
but you know, some guys do 3 years and just decide to leave town.
Yes,
That's
I'm not going anywhere. I'm not leaving town.
Maybe you should talk to Chief Bishop. Okay, next question, Doug Mogul. Or actually, we should go with the order, right? Mr. Fox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Roger, what would you change about the Southwick Police Department and why?
I think this place is run about as smoothly as any other department that I've seen, or, you know, I worked in a smaller town in Monterey and there's really not that much to change. I've talked to a lot of the Westfield officers over the years, and I just think that our department is run very well. I know that in my last interview, I had said that the chain of command isn't followed all the time, but since that, I think it really has changed quite a bit.
Thank you.
Follow-up question. Why do you think that is?
I think the new leadership, you know, with Chief Bishop being in here and Lieutenant Landis. And now I think the sergeants deal with more of these issues where the officers go right to the sergeant. And if it has to go up to lieutenant, then it's brought up to there. But I think the sergeants really do a good job of taking care of the issues that they have.
Thank you. So how have you prepared yourself to become a command officer in the Southwick Police Department?
Well, in the past 2 years since my last interview, and I was kind of disappointed when I didn't get selected last time, but I thought, what could I do to make me a better police officer? And I decided to go back to college, get a master's degree within a year and a half, and continue to do the job that I've been doing in the evidence and property room. And I've actually taken on another role of purging all the reports from the 70s and 80s now that just haven't been done in the past for one reason or another. Somebody was injured, they would start the project and it would just never get finished. And I've been put in a role to finish all these projects that have never been completed.
Thank you.
Oh, the standard question. What is your greatest failure and what did you learn from the last? I'm sorry, what is your greatest failure and what did you learn from that experience?
I think the biggest issue that I had working here was working midnights for so long and just not being out in the public as much because I was basically sleeping during the day and working at night. So I never got the publicity that I think I needed to get in the past. And now, since I'm kind of on a regular schedule now, I can do more of the things that I wanted to do back then. I just couldn't do them. Like even volunteering at, to umpire those softball games 2 weeks ago. It's just something that I wish I would have come to day shift a lot earlier and just basically showed everybody here what I was capable of doing.
Thank you.
Roger, describe how you work as a member of a team.
I mean, if I am given the opportunity to be a sergeant, I would like to be the leader of that team. And I would like people to be able to come to me with their issues and I would be able to talk it out with them. I think I have the demeanor that people can come and talk to me and they're not afraid of being wrong on something that I have to correct them with. And if I do have to correct them, I just basically explain it to them and explain it why it has to be done that way. Because I have been the shift commander now for the past 2 years on a day shift where people do come to me and ask me a lot of questions. And even the sergeants do come in my office and ask me, how things should be done with property evidence, the court procedures. And I'm just glad that people aren't afraid to ask me those questions.
As a follow-up, do you feel you learned a lot sitting in that role over the last 2 years?
Absolutely, I've learned a lot. I've learned a considerable amount with how the department runs because, I'm working with the command staff all the time, whether it be the chief, the lieutenant, Sergeant Banish is working days. I think we all work pretty well together.
Thank you.
What would you say is the most serious issue facing Southwick's law enforcement at this time?
Well, I think the police reform, that's going to make a lot of changes in the future. Our department is fortunate that we really don't have the issues of a bigger police department. Everybody keeps each other in check. We really don't have the issues of the bigger cities in this small town. And if I was working patrol and I did see something happening, I would tell the other officer that that's not right. You shouldn't be doing something like that, but in a nice way and not to belittle them. But I think this town, we do have a great respect from the community. And I think the community really likes us as a police department as a whole.
This next question, trust me, your coworkers talk about all you guys all the time. So the question is, how would your coworkers describe you?
I think right now, I think they would describe me as somebody that gets things finished, where in the past, a lot of things just were left for years and years without being completed. And now that I've had the opportunity to show them what I can do, I have been able to complete all of these tasks that have been given to me. And I've reorganized things and I'm actually working on the records part of it right now, where I'm going through reports from the 70s that were just left in the back and thrown in a pile out there. And I'm finally able to purge all those and contact the state to get permission to get rid of them. I think they would say that when I start something, I always finish it.
Thank you.
Roger, this next question, I think you just answered it, but I'm going to ask it because it's on the list. please provide some examples of receiving an assignment and seeing it through until its conclusion.
Okay, 3 years ago, I was given the assignment of going through the evidence room. Nothing had been kept in there the proper way. Everything was pretty much just put in there, and it wasn't tracked to the way that I would like something tracked. So now when something is put into the evidence room, I can track it from when it goes into the front door of the locker. If that piece of property ends up going to the lab, I can track it there, and then I can track it to when it comes back. And then once it goes to its final storage location. And that's something that the court really looks upon every time there's a serious crime. They want to know where this piece of property was, and the chain of custody was followed the whole time that we had this property. It's just another way that the defense attorneys can get an important piece of property thrown out. And now that evidence room, I think it's done perfectly. Myself, Sergeant Sanders, and Sergeant Kruk have put a lot of time and effort into that room, going through and cleaning and getting rid of the stuff that we can, and coming up with a system to file everything.
That was a great answer. So if by magic, what change would you make to the police department if you were the chief?
If I was the chief, I don't know if you guys are going to want to hear this answer, but to me, I like having our dispatchers here. I don't know if they're going to be leaving at any time, but I just think it's something that is very important for this police department to have our dispatchers here in-house. I mean, they do a lot for us. You know, even if we're tracking somebody in the night and we need somebody to, ping their cell phones, the dispatchers that we do have do a fantastic job of doing certain tasks like that we give them that we sometimes don't have the time to do. And I don't know what's going to happen if it does go to a outside agency.
All right. Anything for us, sir?
I do have a short letter. It's not a long letter. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to interview for the sergeant position. Since you've read through my application packet by now, I don't want to be repetitive. Instead, I'd just like to point out a few areas why I believe I stand out. Although I've been disappointed to not get previous career opportunities, I've handled those without complaint and by focusing on taking more responsibility within the department and improving areas where I might have weaknesses. I recently completed my master's degree in criminal justice. On the way to completion, I also earned a graduate certificate in criminal justice leadership. This was no accident, but a targeted effort to prepare myself for leadership positions within the department. Over about 20 years in this department, not only have I performed shift commander duties hundreds, if not thousands of times, I also led patrol shifts during the pandemic. Officer Taggart and myself were asked to do this because we were the senior officers at the time. I also continue to work in my current court evidence and records role as a shift commander during this pandemic, and I would try to complete all these tasks on the midnight shift. This would involve instructing patrol officers and sergeant on proper procedure, something that is of a critical importance to the courts and positive criminal justice outcomes. I take pride in what I've been able to accomplish in this administrative role, completely overhauling both evidence and the records departments. I already serve in a mentor role to younger officers. I also feel the officers and sergeants value my experience, knowledge, and perspectives on various policing issues. There's actually a chair in my office, and it's often occupied. I work through scenarios and best practices with my fellow officers, and I hope to continue to do so as a sergeant. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, like I said, I'm not sure if we're going to decide tonight or not. Like it's later down in the agenda, we'll probably bring it back up and go from there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night.
Yeah, there's Kleenex. Gentlemen, Officer Masai is our next candidate. All right, you good?
I'm good.
Yeah, everything's in. Should we do that?
Mr. Masai, how are you this evening?
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Can you hear us?
Good evening, David.
Yeah, I can hear you okay.
Okay, great. So we're going to ask you some questions. I don't know if we're making a decision tonight. Later on in the agenda, we'll bring it back up and go from there, okay? We're going to ask the questions, and at the end, you can give us a brief statement or any questions you would like answered. We'll try.
Great.
All right, sir. So the first question from me will be, what are your career goals?
Well, I mean, kind of my obvious first career goal was to get hired here as a police officer. So I was pretty successful at that in 2012. Ultimately, since then, I've been working towards my ultimate career goal, which inevitably is to take command of the Southwick Police Department. But obviously, there's steps and certain roles you need to fall into to achieve that. And tonight, I'm taking the next step to achieve my ultimate career ambition, and that's to interview for sergeant with the Southwick Police Department tonight.
Thank you.
David, what would you change about the Southwick Police Department and why?
Well, I think that's something that I would have to have a serious discussion with if I was given the opportunity to become a sergeant. It would be up to the command staff at that point. You know, we're looking at eventually Lieutenant Banish and Chief Landis here in the near future. So I think the first step that I would take, if given the chance to be a sergeant, would be to have a one-on-one meeting with the two of them and discuss their ambitions with the department and the mission statement and the steps forward that they want to take. And they would have my assurance that I would be right by their side to make sure that that's done. With that being said, you know, we are lucky. We have a fantastic department. We've got a great group of guys and women. We can't leave Kelly out. And I think the biggest thing that I would change, which would make the most benefit to most of the guys, would be the fact that from shift to shift, we need to have more continuity, more what's the word I'm looking for? Things that need to be more similar as far as sergeant to sergeant, what their expectations are. And I know each sergeant has their own expectations, but as far as the paperwork end of it and you know, how that needs to be filed and the procedure that comes with that is probably the one thing that I would change. It would just make everyone else's job a little bit more fluid throughout their shift.
Thank you.
How have you prepared yourself to become a command officer in the Southwick Police Department?
Great question. So I graduated high school, Westfield Trade School. I graduated 4th in the class, National Honor Society, and top in my trade. I worked for a private company for the next 13 years here locally. And within that profession, I took over leadership roles within that organization, running equipment, running different accounts that we had. Worked for about 30 to 40 different police municipalities doing towing and 2 state police agencies. So I got to learn a lot of police officers, you know, from New York to, you know, Connecticut to Vermont, Rhode Island. I began to kind of focus myself towards a criminal justice career. And in 2012, I attended a part-time academy. I graduated from the part-time academy as the vice president of the class. I was hired shortly thereafter as a reservist here. Very shortly after that, within the same year, 2012, I was hired full-time. And attended the full-time academy. I excelled as a leader within the full-time academy as well, graduating as the class guidon bearer, as the class secretary. And I was given the honor of the prestigious Staff Instructors Award. And each academy class gives one recruit officer the Staff Instructors Award. The staff instructors choose that based off of a recruit officer that excels at just about every facet of law enforcement, more importantly, mentors other officers that they're in the recruit class with. Other things that I've done as far as leadership roles, I'm involved with the RAD program. Officer Malone and myself and Officer Miller, she just recently came on board with it. We've kind of worked together to create a great curriculum and give back to the community that way. I've recently been created a RAD Kids program, and just before COVID hit, I had made a deal with the rec center. Unfortunately, that fell apart because of COVID, but that's something that we're looking to re-implement. But probably the biggest thing that I've done to prepare myself for a supervisory role is my involvement with the field training officer program. We got a couple guys here at the department that do an outstanding job as FTO officers. And what that does is it basically makes that officer a frontline supervisor to the officer that we're training. Now, I've trained every officer that's been hired at this department since I've been hired. And, I take great pride in that. One of the things that maybe 2 years ago, we had some one-on-one sit-down meetings with the chief and the lieutenant. And they had asked us about different goals and admirations. And something that I wrote about that I sent to the chief and lieutenant was, when I first got hired, everyone kind of gives that great answer that I want to give back and, I want to, help people. And although I still feel that way strongly, I think my philosophy in law enforcement and policing has changed. And the reason it's changed is because of my role in the FTO program. With police reform coming down the pipeline here, with the national temperature in regards to law enforcement, the philosophy I instill upon the officers that I'm training is, why are we waiting for police reform? Let's show the community that we can be tactful but respectful back to you. And that's something that I instill on all of the trainees underneath me and all the officers underneath me. And it's something that I hope to impress upon all the officers underneath my supervision.
Okay. What was your greatest failure and what did you learn from the experience?
Wow.
I guess that can be anywhere. I don't necessarily mean
Yeah.
that ticket you gave me the other day. It's more of a general.
My greatest failure, before I became an officer, I had great admirations to take over a privately owned company here locally. And we just didn't meet eye to eye. And I would have I love what I do now, don't get me wrong, but I would have loved to have continued that. I don't know if I would really even consider that my greatest failure. But I guess it's an avenue that was never pursued. And I don't know the answer to that, if it was something that was better than what I have now, or if it was a failure in life. That's a really tough question. I appreciate that.
If David, describe how you work as a member of a team.
So I have a lot of different roles that I played within the Southwick Police Department. And that includes RAD Kids, Dive Team, and the FTO program. And if you're not going to be a team player on the dive team when you're 30 feet underwater and your partner, let me put it this way, close your eyes, and that's what it looks like 30 feet underneath Congamon. So you got to have a lot of respect for the person that you're down there with, and you need to be a team player and have their back. I think the best thing that's prepared me to be a team leader, though, has been my ongoing involvement with the Southwick Police Association, because I am instilling within the members what a leadership role should look like and what a team member looks like. I delegate out a lot of tasks to different people, and quite honestly, a lot of those tasks come down to my wife doing it. So, I bring my family aspect into a lot of what I do, and I bring my family aspect into my team player roles, and I take a lot of pride in that.
David, what would you say is the most serious issue facing Southwick's law enforcement at this time?
Wow. I don't think we have major issues, like maybe a larger department, like maybe a larger city, like a Baltimore or something like that. We're lucky in the fact that we've got a great town. We have a great town government, and we have a great group of officers here. And as long as we have policies and procedures, rules and regulations in place, it's really tough to pinpoint the biggest problem facing Southwick right now. I will say, I think it may be the climate. I'm a very active officer, and I make a ton of traffic stops. And a lot of the things that I run into making those multiple traffic stops is you would not believe the amount of people that are actually scared of the police. No, I'm not saying that that's a town plagued problem, and it's nothing that we've created. It's just kind of the climate out there right now. And I'm going to fall back on my philosophy on policing and why I do the things that I do and how I train people. And it falls back onto, if we have a problem and I see that there's a problem out there, I'm going to approach it the best way I can. And if I see more and more people that I approach on a motor vehicle stop that are terrified, when I say terrified, I don't mean this to sound like I'm a big bad guy. Girls are crying, guys are crying when I approach them. So it's treating people with dignity and respect and empathy and compassion, but also explaining to them what I'm doing and why I'm doing that. And at the end of the stops, a lot of those stops, I'll always say, is there any other thing that I can answer for you? And a lot of times I'll get a smirk or a smile, and I'll say, I got you to smile, or see, we're all not that bad. And I always get a smile back or something like that. And that makes me know that what I'm doing is the right thing.
So can I ask a follow-up? That's a great answer to the question. And I think, how is that worn on you as an officer over time? And let me just, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I remember, I guess it was 6 years ago, you and I spent 6 or 7 hours together, and it was kind of at the very beginning of some of this. And you were telling me that I would be shocked how many people were automatically filming you when you pulled them over. And here we are, well, 6 years later, right? And the climate, I don't think has gotten, it hasn't changed for the better, in my opinion. But so how is that worn on you as an officer?
Great question. I guess I would say that if you don't have thick skin, get out of the business. So one thing that they tell us during the police academy is find a hobby, find something else to do when you get home. Don't let your job follow you home. I can't do that. And I'll go home, I'll talk to my wife about certain things, but more importantly, Russ Fox, you kind of have the signs there that say, we support Southwick Police, I believe.
Right.
Anyone that drives by my home can see a sign that I have in my shed. It's a 4x8 sheet of plywood. And I took a little twist to it and it says, Southwick Police, we support you. In other words, I'm a Southwick police officer. This is where I live and I am supporting you. And I can't tell you how many people have stopped at my house and said, hey, I appreciate that sign. And I say to them, well, it's not the sign that they're selling in the center of town. And they're like, no, we know that. We see what you're saying and we want you to know that we respect the sign that you are supporting us. So if you're not able to handle some of the malevolence out there that comes with this job, boy, you better find something better to do real quick because you're not going to last. Luckily, we're blessed and we got a really good group of guys here. And I think you'd be hard pressed to find anyone that doesn't deal with it well. Of course, it's going to weigh on you a little bit, but you just have to be able to work through it.
Thank you.
Oof. So the next question is, and trust me, your coworkers speak to us all the time. How would your coworkers describe you? What's your version of you?
So I hope the board is prepared to give me Lieutenant Banish's position based off this response. That was a joke. No, I think that's a fair question to ask. So I am open to everybody, and I am the officer that at 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting a question while I'm off duty from an officer that's working the day shift. Hey, this is the situation I come across. How do you think I should handle it? I'm the officer that while I'm off duty, I get a call from a second shift officer saying, hey, we've got a domestic. I haven't done an emergency restraining order recently. Can you walk me through it real quick? I'm the officer that at 2 o'clock in the morning, when we get two officers that are being assaulted in our jail cell, they call me because they know I'm going to come out and help them. So I am a fallback to a lot of guys and gals here at the police department because they know they can rely on me when my phone rings for them. I'm hardworking. I have a high work ethic and I have a high level of integrity. And I think that if I had to say one negative thing about myself, I think the most negative thing would be my high level attention to detail. And although that doesn't sound like a conflict, it's the possibility of conflict that comes from that. Luckily, I'm going to fall back to the FTO program. I have a lot of skills in dealing with that conflict resolution and approving trainees' reports before they go to the shift commander. So I have a lot of skills there. So I don't think you're going to have too many people that will speak negatively about me. I think that it'll be more positives. And most of the time they're going to say, yeah, when I have a question, I can call that guy and he's going to pick up the phone and he's going to give me an answer.
All right, thank you.
All right, next question. And just for clarification, before I ask the question, the Support Southwick Police are not sold. It's a donation.
Okay.
And all the profits go toward the RAD program.
Right.
I don't want anybody thinking we're selling.
Right.
Just
Right.
clarification.
And just to clarify, it's not trademark. That's why I changed it around a little bit.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
All right, David, please provide some examples of receiving an assignment and seeing it through until its conclusion.
Wow, great question. So one thing that I recently took on a couple years ago was Chief Bishop had put out an email to the whole group. And the chief had asked, hey, if anybody wants to write a state grant, have at it. Well, like anything around here, I threw my hand out, I volunteered, and the chief said, run with it. So for the past 3 years in a row, I have carried the ball for a state grant for a bicycle and pedestrian grant for enforcement and safety training. And again, I'm in the process of applying for that state grant again. It's a neat program, and it's taught me a lot about the kind of more like the administrative side of the police profession and writing grants. So it's gave me a lot of insight to that. A few more times that I have carried the ball, ran with the ball and carried it right over to the finish line. My wife met her best friend through this job. And what I mean by that is I had responded to a call for service at a house. And when I got there, it was domestic in nature, and spoke with the family, advised them of what they should do or not do, or legalities regarding it. And everything was fine. We cleared. Right? No big deal. A couple days later, I get a phone call from my wife saying, so there's a woman at the house and she's asking for you. And I'm sure that's what every guy wants to hear. Oh, my wife is calling me that there's some other woman at my house. She showed up at the house, gave me much more detail that she was too afraid to at the time when we were on scene. And she was seeking additional advice. And I carried that football across the finish line, and I was able to talk her through the proper procedures through probate court, and she was successful in what she needed to do. An even more consequential time, about a year ago, a young 18-year-old female reached out to me. And she was having a lot of issues with a boyfriend. And, she didn't have the best family. So I went on my own time and I brought her to Westfield District Court, and we were successful in getting a restraining order for her. And she was one of my letters of recommendation. And that's another time that I carried the ball right over the finish line and did something for a community member on my own time off duty to make sure that she was protected.
Thank you.
What would you change? I'm sorry. What change would you make to the police department if you were the chief?
Well, we're not there yet. And I need to get through this process first, and then the lieutenant's process next. So I would say, ask me in 3 years, right? One thing that I would possibly change, I want to see a third guy on the shift. This 2-man minimum is not enough. Our town is growing. It's too difficult for families to juggle their life, to juggle their personal lives, and have to worry about, am I going to be ordered in, or is it okay to take this day off to go to my kid's graduation? The current ranking structure and the way it works right now, it's not working. It's not working for everyone here. And I would want to see that change. I would want to see a 3-man minimum, and I would want to see more accountability for officers.
So can I follow up on that? What do you mean, Dave? For accountability?
In other words, I don't think that we should be granted every day off that we want. I think that if it's going to cause a conflict for a coworker, it should be denied. And the reason I say that is because what's one of the biggest morale deficits? When people aren't getting along, the morale is going to be low. If there's if there's inner fighting, there's going to be conflict, there's going to be low morale. So I think one way to keep morale a little bit higher would be to deny people days off, and to make sure that everyone is accountable for their shifts instead of these order ends that occur.
Thank you.
All right, that concludes the questions. David, do you have anything you'd like to say or ask?
I don't have anything that I'd like to ask, but I will just make a brief statement. Nothing that I've prepared, mainly because I don't think that's the route that we should be going down. I chose intentionally not to write out a novel 2 weeks before this interview, because that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for supervisors that can think on their feet and think for themselves and think on a dime. Just for a light recap, again, I graduated honors in high school. I graduated in honors throughout the part-time academy, honors throughout the full-time academy, where I received awards. I'm a dedicated, high work ethic, high integrity employee of the town of Southwick. And there's nothing more that I like than to give back to my community. You know, I'm a fourth generation member of the community. My kids attend the Southwick schools, and on our days off, well, today's my wedding anniversary, and my wife and I were enjoying our time on Lake Congamon, which is where we spend most of our time. We take advantage of the rail trail. We take advantage of all of what Southwick has to offer, including our restaurants and all of our retailers. And one thing that I don't think I got to talk about during the interview was the direction and where I will go if I'm honored to be given this position as a sergeant. So there's three things that I'm going to do immediately. And the first thing is I'm going to have that one-on-one interview with the chief and the lieutenant and make sure that I have a sound understanding of their mission statement and what their expectations are for the department. The second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to have one-on-one meetings with the officers that I will have direct supervision over. And it's not to give them a hard time or critiques, but it's going to be to sit down and, hey, tell me what's going on in your life. What would make your life easier here at the police department? Do you feel you're deficient in training somewhere? Do you need more help on certain things? And I'll get a better understanding of each officer individually. And the third thing I'm going to do is I'm going to sit down and review with each officer that I'll have direct supervision over my expectations and what my expectations are as a frontline supervisor, as a sergeant with the Southwick Police Department. And I will make that very, very easy to approach me. And I'm not looking for yes men. In other words, I don't want to be able to give an order to someone and get a yes. I want the officers underneath me to say, hey, do you think that we could do something different here? Or maybe we can have a better outcome. I'm not looking for yes men. I want someone that's going to work with me. And I would be humbled and pleased if I was given this opportunity. And I would not let the department down, the town down, or the board down. One thing that I would like to follow up with is when I was hired, I did make a commitment to the board about my education. And I'm happy to report that I just scheduled my last class for my criminal justice degree. And I'm willing to make another guarantee to the board that it's not going to stop with my associates, and I'm going to keep working towards that because I believe that it's only going to enhance my abilities to lead as a supervisor within the Southwick Police Department. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Like I said earlier, we may or may not decide tonight. It's further down on the agenda for discussion. So
Sure.
you'll find out sooner or later.
Great.
Thank you,
Have a
David.
nice evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Just for the record, nobody here recognizes Ernie Malone without a hat.
Not a Zoom bomber? You
I
sure?
thought you were a Zoom bomber, but you weren't eating potato chips. We weren't sure.
All right. Officer
I had to look
Taggart,
close myself. I'm not gonna lie.
Final guy here.
Thanks, sir. Good evening.
How we doing? Can you hear us?
Yes, sir.
Wonderful. So we're gonna ask some questions tonight. There'll be time for you to respond, if there's anything you want to say at the end, or you have any questions for us.
Okay.
Further down on the agenda, we'll discuss it. I don't know if we're making a decision tonight or not. We'll just see how it plays out.
Okay.
All right, thank you. So first question I have is, what are your career goals?
Well, at this point, my career goals are hopefully to obtain the rank of sergeant, to continue serving the town of Southwick for my next few years as to the best of my ability, and continue to stay community service based, and continue being a partner with the community through volunteer work and creating more of a atmosphere between us and the citizens, where we're more of a family. They get to know us. Everybody knows they're police officers. You hear a lot of people out there saying that I really don't know any of the new guys anymore. We want to have some more of those get-togethers where we see each other a lot more often. It's a nicer atmosphere. And then hopefully through all that, hopefully continue up the ranks and maybe at some point leave this department.
Thank you.
Mike, what would you change about the Southwick Police Department and why?
I think this applies to almost all departments now. With the current stress of this job, we kind of forget about each other. We're all A-type personalities. We're really tough people. We're supposed to be, stone and be able to handle everything, and we can't. So I think the one thing I would change is maybe once a month or maybe once every other month, we have officers pick someone that's going to be their go-to person, or someone from outside that they can talk to, release stress from, and things like that. And maybe on top of that, we could add something and bring back how we used to do everything. We used to have get-togethers where we would all, have camaraderie, and during Christmas, they would do the Christmas things for all the kids and things like that. We don't really do that anymore. We forget how important we all are to each other. And that's not just in the police department. That could be a townwide thing. Even with DPW moving up the street, they're only a few miles away, but the disconnect now between all of us and them, if you're not a social person to go talk to them, you may not know any of them. Things like, that would be my best thing for that.
Thank you.
How have you prepared yourself to become the command officer in the Southwick Police Department?
Well, I think starting from a young age, I've always been community service based. And I believe that's one of the key things of being a leader, is to be able to care for others as if they were your own family. So when I was in high school, I was the youngest deacon of my church, which is one of the leadership roles in that section. I went to the Dominican Republic, Laramana, to help build a hospital for Haitian sugarcane workers because they were not allowed to use Dominican hospitals. So I went there, we raised money by ourselves and supported our own trips down there and to pay for the materials we used. I've gone through my education, extended it to a Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice to advance my ability in the field of criminal justice. I went through as a intern with a police department and was later hired down there in Portsmouth, and took on some roles such as the elder affairs officer, which was a partner between the elderly people in the community and the police department, where if there was any things they needed, we would go out and speak with them and get any care or anything else that they would need to help them out in that place. And that, I think, really hit a mark with me, because you learned a lot from them, a lot of life skills that I don't have to learn on my own just by talking to them. And that really set the basis of what a good leader is. And I would ask people, because we had some people that were in the military down there, some admirals, and they gave me a lot of advice how to go forward in the police field. After that, coming here, I've taken on multiple instructor roles. At this point, I'm an MPTC lead firearms instructor, which is certified to teach an entire academy class and lead that entire academy class with them and sign off on all of their progress. I've also gone to an officer in charge school, which is based specifically on the stopgap between a sergeant and a patrolman when you're acting in the capacity of a shift commander, which gives you a lot of life skills of peer conflict, low frequency, high risk calls like motor vehicle shoots, and just how to be in the middle of the road for the command structure, taking orders, giving orders, and things like that. I've also volunteered for the school resource officer, which put me in a spot where I was the person between the administration here, the administration there. I was in between all of the people there, between the admin at each school and the teachers. And to be able to really bring everyone together and be organized, self-motivated, and really push myself to my limits to get the best result. I think that really was a good leadership experience, and have people follow you and be able to move on and get all those projects done. Recently, I've taken on as a lot of shift commander. I've been a shift commander eligible since 2008, and I've taken on that many roles. With the last recent pandemic, Officer Arduini and I were assigned to different shifts, but we were the officer in charge our entire rotation for months at a time.
Okay. What is your greatest failure and what did you learn from the experience? And I don't think it has to be police related. I just,
No.
Yeah.
I agree. I would agree with that. I believe my biggest failure was not trying as hard as I should have in high school. My mind was on other things. And I really regret not doing and paying attention as much as I should have. I put more effort in college learning from that mistake. And that has really led me through everything, that if you're going to do something, you got to be passionate about it. You've got to give it your all, and you have to be fully invested, because if you're not, you will fail. And I think that's what I learned from that, is if you're going to do something, give it everything. Even if you don't think it's going to be good enough, give it all you have. And if you need help, ask for help. And I think a lot of people, especially in our field, are afraid to ask for that. I've learned that if you need help, ask for it, because there's always people willing to help you.
thank you.
Like, describe how you work as a member of a team.
I would say it best that if anybody needs any help, I'm always there, willing to jump in. I don't like to sit idly by. I don't have to be the person in charge. I can sit back and follow if it need be. But if someone needs a decisive decision, or someone needs to take the reins and go with a project, I'm not afraid to do that either. I'm very versatile. I try to be the person, be of help, not of hindrance.
Officer Taggart, what would you say is the most serious issue facing Southwick's law enforcement at this time?
I would say at this point, you're going to have a lot of police reform coming down the pipeline here. As serious of a effect, I don't think we're going to have a huge problem because of the caliber of people we have here. But it's going to take a lot of extra effort. It's going to be a lot of growing pains, a lot of learning curve. The town's also growing. So there's going to be a lot of extra work and extra things we're going to have to do here to really stay on point. I think with the select board choosing to do an admin sergeant, that really helps out keep everything in check. But I believe that that's our major hurdle at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, how would your co-workers describe you? And not the version they give us every day. What's the real version?
I'm hoping they would say I'm a competent, stable person that's always willing to help them out. As an FTO, I've always exemplified that you need to hold yourself to a higher standard, and I try to give that version of myself every day, to be someone of service, to be responsible, someone that rolls with the punches. You have a good personality. You're easy to talk to. You're approachable. We've had some new officers that have come on, and even though I wasn't their FTO, I've offered to assist them any way I can, whether it be from going through your duty bag to make sure you have all the gear you need, or going over calls. I think they understand that I'm extremely self-motivated, just by the functions that I've served through SRO and all the changes that they've seen from that program, when they've had issues at training, or they've had problems qualifying with anything. I'm not someone that's going to yell at you. We're going to figure out together how we can solve the problem and move on with as little stress as possible, because that's what it's all about. We're here to work with each other, for each other. I hope they look at me as a friend. Sometimes brother, if I'm getting older now, so maybe father, I don't know. So I hope that's how they see me.
Thank you.
Let's see, that's my turn. Okay, here we go. Mike, please provide some examples of receiving an assignment and seeing it through until its conclusion.
Well, I guess I'll stick with the most recent, which was the school resource officer. We received the go-ahead to do the state police lockdown. So starting that from soup to nuts there, it was, you had to start with redoing all the floor plans and getting the maps put together, getting keys, interdepartment cooperation between the fire department, myself, other police agencies, the state police, getting the teachers on board with training, and admin on board with training, getting everything put together. So that way, when we did our first lockdown drill, training the students, and really seeing that through to being proficient in the schools. At this point, I think they can all do it with their eyes closed. And then going forward with that, we did the release, the reunification, which was going and talking to different spaces in the community with where we could go. So I personally went out and spoke to local churches and other entities that would be willing to open up their building to us, or the schools, in the event that we need to evacuate, and get a memorandum of agreement between them and the school, which I made multiple drafts for, so the school committee could review it to see what they wanted to do, and go through that. And that was a big undertaking, but that involved, with all this lockdown stuff, that involved renumbering all of the windows in the school. That involved getting access for all the patrolmen. So every single patrolman, the ambulances, the fire chief, police chief, everybody has access to the school so they can buzz in and get in. And furthermore, that involved camera systems. With the grants that I got through Representative Boldiga, we got $150,000 in grants, which now is almost complete in the high school. We have to do a couple of tweaks, but all the cameras can be reviewed in dispatch at a moment's notice. And it's nice because a week ago, we had the students camping out in the back parking lot. And before, that was a blind spot. The dispatcher could bring up a full screen of the whole back parking lot and saw everything that was going on. So it helped us on midnights as well, where we could watch if anybody was making any mess or whatever. We could go up there and stop them as well. But I talked to them. They seemed they were going to be good kids, so I didn't have an issue with that. And I digress. We continued on to getting all of the reunification kits put together. So at this point, if there is an emergency, we can go from lockdown to evacuation to rescue, I would say, to evacuation, to reunification, and with relative ease. And that was a huge undertaking based on, I had did all that while still performing my role as a school resource officer, taking incident reports, getting to know all the people, because most of that was in my first year, and developing relationships and things like that. So that was a huge organization nightmare, but it seemed to be okay at the end. I think we're almost done with it. So Officer Sanders has got a pretty good setup right now.
Thank you.
So imagine for a second that magically you were chief. What change would you make to the police department?
I would have to say at this point, due to the town growing, I would probably go with a 3-man minimum instead of 2. We've had a lot of situations where we've gotten arrests, or we've had incidents where 3 people would really be needed with either storms or anything else. It's nice to have that extra body on hand.
All
Thank
right.
you.
That concludes the questions, sir. Do you have anything for us?
I have a short letter.
As long as Banish didn't write it, we'll be fine.
I said, well, that would be a short
Not a
letter.
novel.
So thank you for allowing me to interview. It's been an honor serving this police department and yourselves. Throughout my 14 years here in Southwick, I volunteered for a variety of additional roles and responsibilities. I take my additional responsibilities to display my commitment to the Southwick Police Department and the community of Southwick. I believe the best teacher is experience, and I've been afforded frequent opportunities to act in the capacity of a sergeant as a shift commander. Like I said, during the recent pandemic, Officer Arduini and myself were shift commanders for multiple months at a time. And I've had training specifically towards the role of sergeant. I've continued to expand my skills as a leader through various types of trainings, preferred practices. I also coordinated trainings with various state agencies, local fire and police departments. And through my job performance, education, and volunteer work, all listed in my application packet, I feel I've met or exceeded the preferred requirements of sergeant, and I look forward to many more years of service with the town of Southwick and servicing its citizens, and hopefully after tonight as part of the command staff.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Like I said earlier, I'm not sure what we're going to do. Later on the agenda, there's a time when we'll speak of this again. So we may make a decision tonight, or we may wait. We'll have to just see.
Well, if you're up at 3 a.m. tonight, give me a call. I'm up.
Oh,
I'll be here.
you're waking up. I hear you. All right. Well, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes the meeting, right? We can go? No, unfortunately, that's not the case. All right. So next up, it looks like DPW Sewer Division abatement request for 142 Berkshire Ave. Is Mr. Brown? I thought I saw him.
Was here.
He was.
He snuck out.
He was here, but the letter that he wrote here,
I did read that.
yeah, he's not recommending it be granted.
Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
Mr. Chairman, based on his recommendation, I make a motion to deny the request.
Okay.
I would second the motion.
All right, motion was made and seconded. All those in favor? Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Clerk, aye.
Clerk to the clerk. Yep. All right, so next up is the FY21 reappointment for staff, department heads, and boards and committees. Do we want to tackle this whole thing tonight?
I think we have to appoint the police and fire, correct?
Yeah.
Yes, the last meeting, the board made a point of wanting to take care of as many of the police, fire, and any other employee-related ones, but you were then to explore the boards and committees at another date. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, somewhat.
You need to read them in their entirety, Carl, or can we appoint the
Well,
existing
you can
police
take, I
department?
mean, you have sections that were given to you for police. And the
Okay.
fire, because the fire chief gave a separate section too for his. But you can most certainly do police and fire.
But do we need to read the names of the officers
No,
and
because
reserves?
they'll be submitted, they'll become an attachment to the minutes that Lisa will prepare.
Mr. Chairman, Russ Fox will make a motion to appoint the police and fire as submitted.
Doug Mogul will second the motion.
All right, all those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul and I.
Is that all we're gonna do tonight then?
We can do fire too, right? Did we have the
Oh,
fire?
I'm sorry, yeah, fire, yep. Fire is printed out on this.
Yeah, you have fire. It's in a printed part of your mail folder that was submitted on 5/27.
And that includes full timers and reservists, correct?
Right, career and reservists he's given you, plus there's another 5 individuals you need to act on after that.
Correct.
All right, so I need a motion.
Russ Fox will make that motion.
Doug Mogul will second the motion.
All those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul and I.
And you said there's 5 others.
Right, if you,
Yeah, it's on the memo from May 27th, attached to the one with the appointment list. It's in front of it.
Thank you.
right,
All right, so I need a motion for those.
Russ Fox will make that motion.
and just a point of clarification, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
These appointments are subject to those individuals passing the requirements of the chief and the deputy, including the physical and all other standards under the state of Massachusetts and the Southwick Fire Department.
Russ Fox will add that to his motion.
Doug Mogul will also add that I've known Ashley Sherlin since she was practically an infant, and I can't believe she's old enough to be an EMT, but I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul and I.
Oh, I got that list right here, okay. All right.
Okay, so if you want to go back to your master appointment sheet, you can start at least going through the employee ones. That would be, the first one would be Director of Assessment, Sue Gore.
Mr. Chairman, can we do this, have Mr. Steinhardt read off the ones and do just one motion for all?
Okay. These are going to be the employee ones. Director of Assessment, Sue Gore, 1 year. Building Inspector Kyle Scott, 1 year. And then what we have is Deputy Building Inspector Bob Sullivan, alternate Building Inspector Arthur Lawler. Stanley Broska Jr. is Gas and Plumbing Inspector. Alternate Building and Gas Plumbing Inspector Stanton J. Broska, Glenn Ryder. Wiring Inspectors Robert M. Johnson, Ronald Deedy, and Louis Borelli. Alternate Wiring Inspector Joshua Borelli. Let's see. The Town Clerk Treasurer Collector, you have to bring in the chairman of the FinCom and the assessors, so we'll schedule that for the future. DPW Director Randall Brown, Special Assistant DPW Richard Grinnells, DPW Supervisor Chris Feria, Tree Warden and Moth Inspector Randall Brown. Let's see, I believe you took your animal control with the police, but if not, we're going to include her. Animal Control Royal Bridges. Let's see, Conservation Commission, Dennis Clark, Coordinator. Let's see, Election Fence Viewer, you did all police, you did all fire. Fire chief is done. Forest fire warden, Russell Anderson. Graves officer, John Andrew. Health director is taken care of by the Board of Health. And let's see, chapter 148A municipal hearing officer, Carl J. Steinhardt. Parking ticket hearing officer, Michelle Hill. And of course, that's out of, that's beyond that other special act that covers hers. John Goddard will be the PVPC coordinator because he's the interim town planner. I believe, let's see, dispatch, I think you've taken care of all those with the police. If not, we'll just include those. Dispatch part-time, Cadero, La Bomba, Andrea. And let's see, you did all the police, you did all the reserve, school crossing guard, Sean Angel. And that's it for employees. And that'll just leave the boards and committees.
Russ Fox will make that motion as read by the CAO.
Doug Mogul will second the motion.
All those in favor, Joe Didi will abstain because I have a relative on this.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul, aye.
Alrighty. That's good for now, Carl.
Yeah, no, that's good progress for tonight. And our office will be working with the treasurer collector's office to do all the appointment slips and get that underway for the police and fire executives to have in place for their agencies. We will be bringing back, at a future meeting, the emergency management ones.
Okay,
Okay,
all righty. Review and approve call force pay rates for FY22 and FY23. I believe we
Yeah.
saw the chief, right?
yeah, and I believe this came up at a budget meeting, but the chief can speak to it, but it's most certainly consistent with what the chief discussed during the budget process. It also helps him address issues related to the ongoing increases in the Massachusetts minimum wage laws.
Right, so what you have in front of you is FY21, where we are now, how 22, the minimum wage affects, and in 23, when it goes to $15 an hour. So basically what we got into a little bit of a jam for was when someone comes brand new, not haven't been to the academy, et cetera, they used to come in at a minimum wage, and as that went up, we never really changed it much. So what ended up happening last year was, you can see the $13.50, we had to go up to January 1st, but it creates a disparity. So now that you're trained, you're making the same amount as someone that just entered. So what this proposal is for FY22 and FY23 of moving those rates up at a percentage that helps disperse it over the time, over the ranks, over the training, in addition to the standby. The other thing that it does, aside from that, is on the EMT side, our basic rate of the 1775, raising that to 1925 for both provisional and the basics, doing the call force nighttime, gets them back up. We found that, especially with COVID, we really fell behind. And we're in a case now where a paramedic is making even to almost what a basic is making, and they have the legal responsibility of the patient care. I did do some research on the medic rate, and basically the lows were $18-20 an hour. These are for like agencies, Hilltown, Southampton, people that use per diem medics, with a high of around $25 to $26 an hour. So some of that is based on skill sets, years in the service, et cetera. So I try to spread it out a little bit and target the 2250 as an accurate place where we should become FY22. On the budget side, as Carl mentioned, this was brought forward on the call for us. We had a slight increase in the overall budget. This would take care of that. And as well as for the EMT medic side of things, we also, we have a lot of moving targets. We have single people on, we have double bubbled along. We have provisionals. So there's a lot of moving targets there, but we think that we can fulfill the budget as it is at this 2250.
Okay. Any questions from the board?
No, Russ Fox would make a motion to approve the rates as suggested by the fire chief.
Second,
Hold on a second. All those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul, aye.
Wonderful. Thank you, Chief.
Just a clarification,
Yep.
I guess this would be Carl. So for next year, FY '23, we don't have to come back. This will be included in the rates for next year as well.
Yes, we have to comply with that anyway, so you want to make sure that this covers you for January 1st of 2022.
Ooh, right. Okay. Thank you.
Right, which is part of fiscal year 22 anyway.
Thank you.
All right, so now we need a motion to accept the donation to the fire department from Susan and Raymond Alberti.
Russ Fox will make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Doug Mogul, will second.
All right, all those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul, aye.
Okay. Review and approve grab tab ad in the Westfield newspaper.
Russ Fox will make the motion that we do the same that we did last year, Mr. Chairman,
And what did we do last year?
2 years ago.
Yeah,
2 years ago.
No idea
sec-
what we did.
I
don't-
forget exactly what it was, Mr. Chairman, but I think it's great that we appreciate the accomplishment of the seniors at Southwick Regional.
All right,
I would second that motion.
all right, all those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul, aye.
Dun, dun, dun. Okay, next up is the approved updated SME listings for State Ethics Commission for MGL Chapter 268A.
Right, as you know, this is an annual exercise you go through based upon information through the town clerk's office for the people who are in these various, and a lot of these roles relate to, obviously, a lot of small business people that act as your various inspectors, as well as your interim town planner had to be rolled in under this. And otherwise, people have to be designated by the board in these other roles to achieve this special dispensation, and has to be filed with the Ethics Commission. So if you look at the document that's been provided to you, it's got some similarities in the past, but it's also got some updates because you've had quite a few retirements and you've had to backfill these individuals in these roles. And then you've had some people that have gone on to other employment.
All righty, so I need a motion.
Russ Fox will make the motion to approve the recommendation of the CAO.
Doug Mogul will second the motion.
Right, all those in favor, Joe Didi will abstain because I have a relative once again on that.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul, aye.
Sorry. What it is. All right, thank you. All right, next up, approve updated letter for understanding with the Springfield Fire Department Deputy Chief.
Mr. Chairman,
How
Yes.
about
This was-
Southwick?
sorry?
I think he said Springfield.
I said SFD, but okay, Southwick Fire Department. Yeah.
I assure you he's staying in Southwick. Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman, this was a MOU or letter of understanding negotiated under the prior chairmanship per the board's direction for your acceptance.
Russ Fox will make the motion to approve.
All those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul, aye.
Wonderful. Board, select board goals.
Right, we're in the process of updating the draft since last year, and so it's going to reflect some of the issues that town meeting has voted, as well as other items. So the board will be getting a draft in the near future that it then can review and edit.
Wonderful. Thank you. Authorize chairman to sign Union Southwick Police Department MOA for Juneteenth holiday contract change.
Yep, that's to reflect our ability to incorporate that as a declared holiday in the current contract, not the one under negotiation. So this needs to be done so that we can address this issue. Without it, it would cause a timing of an issue of when the distribution is made under the contract terms. And this way it'll allow us to, after the holiday has happened, so we determine who gets the benefit of that, of those funds as opposed to who doesn't get the benefit. So that becomes a payroll issue at the last payroll of the fiscal year. So it's been worked out by all the parties. The union has signed off on it. The town accountant had requested it. The incoming chief wants it addressed. So this accomplishes everything for all the parties.
So the Springfield Police Department Union actually got this one through. They got it done. That's great. Wonderful. So do we need a motion for the chair to sign?
Yes.
Russ Fox will make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful.
I'll second the motion. About
Wonderful.
time that union got something through the Board of Selectmen.
I didn't say that. I was trying to.
I did. I'm not the chair anymore. I can speak my mind, right?
Not so much as the clerk. Be careful. All right. So all those in favor, Joe Didi, aye.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul and I.
Wonderful. I'm glad that's done. That's awesome. All right. Anything else on that agenda that I missed or anything? Being my first time.
We just have the new business items to go over, but all the action items are done.
We're done. We're good. Okay. All right. Discuss and appoint two sergeants for from the candidate pool. You guys ready to make a decision tonight? You want to wait a week? You want to do it?
Yeah, I personally, I just soon get it over with. I don't want to see people wait 2 weeks while we go back and forth.
Yep.
I think we know all three candidates. Two of them were in front of the board recently. Three good interviews. Two of the candidates meet our preferred requirements. Officer Arduini, 20 years, Officer Taggart, 14 years, Officer Masai is 8 years. But like I said, two of them do meet our preferred candidates. They have longer years of service, longer experience as shift commanders, proven records in management. And one of them, I think, wrote one of the best cover letters I've ever seen for an interview. So if you're looking for a nomination, I'd have to go with Officer Arduini and Officer Taggart to fill those two positions.
Well, honestly, I think all three could fill them, as you said. I don't know what the difference was in preferred, why two are better than the other. I think they're all outstanding. It's Masai's first time interview, and I would agree, Russ. There's some more years left there. None of this happens overnight for these guys. And unfortunately, we're a small department where there's not a ton of position. It's not a revolving door for these positions in Southwick. Hopefully, the guys stay on for quite a few years and they're there. But, I would agree. I think those two are fine. I don't want to count Masai out, though. I think he had a great interview.
I think he did an outstanding interview.
Yeah.
And his work ethic, if that continues like that, someday he probably will be chief of the Southwick Police Department.
Yeah, understood. Mr. Moglen, your thoughts? If you unmute yourself, clerk, we can all hear you.
It's been one of those days. So I concur, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chair. I mean, I think, David had a great interview. I think Officer Arduini, I know he and I had a long chat the last time we had this rodeo. And, I think he's done a lot in a very short period of time to kind of put him in the perfect spot to be promoted to sergeant here. And Officer Taggart as well. And I think it's interesting to me on especially through COVID, what's gone on and how the men and women of the Southwick Police Department have truly changed their roles and stepped up in one way or another, all of them. So I would, especially around Roger, I think he's just done a phenomenal job. Some of the tasks and some of the stuff I've heard from the chief and others as far as the record keeping and the evidence area and projects that had been started and stopped to see those through. And that's actually one of our direct interview questions. And so, hats off to Roger and I think hearing from the last round of interviews and making changes. So I would, if that was a motion, Mr. Vice Chair, I'll second the motion for Roger Arduini and Mike Taggart.
Yeah, I do feel bad. I should have fought harder for Arduini a couple of years back and I didn't. And I do apologize for that because I think he was in the making then. And, not that I didn't see it, but it just didn't work out that way. So a motion was made for those two gentlemen and seconded. All those in favor, Joe Didi, aye.
Fox, aye.
Doug Moglen, aye. And if I could just add, I think the last time we did this, I did talk to Roger, where my head was at, and I think I was pretty clear during the interview process as to how we ended up where we ended up. And I think I don't think we're righting or wrong. I think this is proper and this is where we should be. No, I really do. And like I said, I want to commend Roger for hearing everything that went on and doing what needed to be done and put himself right in the perfect spot to be where he is today. And congratulations, Sergeant Arduini and Sergeant Taggart. And for, just to follow up, David had a spectacular interview and, there's no doubt in my mind, he's going to be a very, very strong candidate the next time we have this. Right. And, I think just where the timing works out and where things are with the candidates, I think this is the right outcome. And I think, if anyone's going to, take anything from this as, this was the first time out. And I think it was a great experience. And I think, David, if anyone on our department is going to be, take what he learns from this to grow and just be a better candidate the next, even better candidate the next time around.
Well, and the sad part is you can pick two, right? So it wasn't that he's got to grow as much as we only had two openings.
No, correct.
And it is what it is. And the funny part with Mr. Messiah is, even though that was an interview, that's David. He'll tell you right or
Oh,
wrong,
absolutely.
no matter what it is. So, yeah, it's all good.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, you would be requesting that Lieutenant Landis seek out and speak to the three individuals and notify them immediately.
Yeah, but not Taggart. I have to call him at 3 a.m.
3 a.m. We're going to meet him somewhere, right?
Yeah.
3
Yeah,
o'clock.
3 a.m. Yep. So everyone but Taggart. That way he can sweat a little more.
The vice chairman will let the younger members meet him at 3 a.m.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
All right, Bobby, you'll take care of that. All right.
Okay. Thank you. So that was new business. All right. Select board goals and objectives again.
Same thing. Yeah, we're going to carry that over.
Okay, fine. Status on dog hearing dispute compliance for 102 Mort Vining Road.
Right, you have in attendance, Mr. Chairman, the lieutenant as well as the animal control officer, and she did submit a letter to you a while ago, and then they did go out just recently around Memorial Day, updated it. So I don't know if you want to have her speak to the issue or the lieutenant. What would you prefer, Mr. Chairman?
We'll start with the lieutenant.
All right, so Liz ACO Bennett. We've certainly been following up on this for quite some time and trying to evaluate and actually work with the party to make sure they're in compliance with the with your order. As you can see in your notes from the report that you did is just somewhat unsure exactly of how sincere they are in following through with what you put together.
They did
Liz,
follow through.
yeah,
So that's how sincere they are.
right. So there is some talk about possibly them moving, and if that were the case, how do we want to go about making sure that they continue to be in compliance without maybe erecting this fence and expending a lot of money in doing so. But the fact of the matter is we don't know if they are or not. And Liz can elaborate a little bit more because she's had, one-on-one conversations with them and probably has a little better perspective. But as it stands from my position, they're not in compliance.
Thank you. Ms. Bennett,
Yes, sir. Every time I've spoken with them, it seems to be evasive, vague. We were going to do that. We weren't going to do that. The last time we sent them a letter and I talked to Jennifer, she said that no training had taken place yet. She had bigger situations to deal with. I sent that to y'all in a letter. I would go out on the 27th and met with Sean. And like I said, I asked very direct questions. Is this done? And I got very vague answers and nothing real. It was very difficult to pin him down to a yes or no. What should have been a yes or no was basically very vague. So the thing I got was, we're putting the house on the market, but we failed the septic. So we have to fix the septic before we can sell the house. And I said, okay, so that means you haven't put up a fence. He said, well, no, we haven't. I said, okay, fine. Took a little bit to get to that. I said, okay, so what about the training? And I got, well, we've had other things to deal with. And long and short of it was, no, they hadn't gotten the training done. I said, well, do you have it set up so that, you're getting quotes? Do you have any estimates? Well, he says, no. I said, okay. Have you contacted anyone to start the training? Well, no. Okay. So none of the training was done. The fence isn't up. And again, it was just kind of really vague, really evasive even. When asked a question that only required a yes or no, he wouldn't answer the question directly, and I had to really press. I just got the attitude that we're going to put it off as long as we possibly can, so we don't really have to do anything. So, and back in, I believe it was February, that they were supposed to get me the certificate of training. Still wasn't done. There was not even an initial, not even we're going to talk to this person, that person, they had nothing. So long and short of it, nothing has been done except tying the dog out or keeping him in the house. I can't make them do. I don't know how to make them do. I don't know how to make them train their dog. I don't know, where we go from there with this. It's just, I don't get the feeling that this is being taken seriously, maybe. So your input is much appreciated at this point.
all right, thank you. So gentlemen, it's back in our court, and we don't have 50 Zoom callers on to tell us how great the family is this time. So what's the pleasure of the board? I think something needs to be done. I understand you're moving. I get the fence. I get all that, but it's more of a slap in our face and nothing's been done.
I agree. I mean, as far as
Exactly.
you know, the fence I get, okay, there's a problem there. They probably should have come back in front of to either the ACO or Lieutenant Landis or even this board to say, hey, we've got a problem here with this, putting a fence in because of whatever, but that
Right,
doesn't
and I
stop
think
you from
that-
training the dog.
I did address that with Jennifer. I said, if you need an extension, I said, I'm only here to report to the board. Yes, you did what you were supposed to do, or no, you didn't. If you need some sort of an extension, you need to contact the board formally and say, I need an extension on the fencing, I need an extension on here, and these are the reasons why. And I don't know if she ever did that.
To my knowledge. I mean,
No, we never received anything, Mr. Chairman.
you know, and I don't know what's the right answer here, right? I don't know if, you know, apparently, I don't even know. I don't know that you could start leveling a daily fine according to the provision of what we have under Mass General Law until it's done, right? Or the dog leaves town. Could we make the dog a resident of the shelter until they come into compliance with at least the training aspect of this thing?
That could be done, but that's up to you.
Because that, you know, I mean, it's unfortunate. I don't want to impose again, the owners have once again failed an animal in the town of Southwick, and the animal is going to suffer the consequence thereof, right? And not that our animal shelter is a horrible place, but I mean, it just seems to me like, I don't know what's the right answer. And you know, just finding somebody, it doesn't make any sense, right? And then why impose a financial hardship on someone who's trying to move? I get that part, but you know, and one of the things, and I don't want to go too far afield of our discussion, but I've been talking to the health inspector on another issue, is perhaps we need to figure out some legislation in order to have fines accrue that become a lien on a property that gets satisfied when the property's sold, right? Whether it's a health issue on a vacant home or something like this, right? Where, you know, someone's going to rack up some fines and, you know, it does impose a severe, you know, could be a financial hardship. Okay, you could remedy that at the closing of the property if there's, you know, accrued fines via a lien. But in this, you know, this particular case, getting back to this, I don't know what's the right answer, and how you show to the folks that, you know, they attend. We had a hearing, public hearing, a decision was rendered and filed, and they chose to ignore it. This would be no different than, you know, a zoning type situation or another situation where there's a permit granted or a decision made and it wasn't followed. Sorry, Carl.
You make a good point. So I believe that the chair could have the lieutenant in the ACO discuss what the options are with Ryan O'Hara, who usually handles your dog-related legal issues like he's done before for the board from town council. So that would be the direction that the board should do, is to see from council what those remedies are, whether or not it's something that he ends up initiating, or it's whether or not the court officer goes up to the district court or what. But that, you know, they can sort out, because generally most people comply with what the board asks for, so we don't usually get into one of these situations. It's very unusual.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, isn't it? Because even if the dog was trained, they met you halfway. As a select board, we would understand the fence because you're moving, and we would bite our tongue and say, yeah, okay, we get it. But you didn't even do that. So now it's just an embarrassment, you know, and there's no excuse for it.
Right.
So let's spend $500 from the attorney to tell us there's no excuse for it, which I get. We have to do it legally.
And I agree. I think even just getting an estimate on a training. Okay, I understand you want to sell the house and everything else, but you know, this was something they were given 60 days to do.
Yes.
I agree that it's just basically being thrown back and saying, whatever, you know, we have bigger things to worry about. You know.
How much does it cost to get my dog trained?
According to Home Guide,
And
the
you know,
average cost of dog training is $30 to $80 per class, with most spending about $50 per hour. Dog obedience training schools cost $200 to $600 per week, while boot camp kennel training runs $500 to $1,250 per week.
Bingo. That was hard, huh? Yeah. What else would you like
There
me
you
to do on? Anyways,
Well,
Mr.
even
Fox, humor us with your
Hey,
enlightenment.
Well, Mrs. Langdon did call me a couple of weeks ago and told me that they were going to be moving. They had a septic issue. And I did tell her that she would need to contact the animal control officer and work with her so that she could come back to this board. It's a little disturbing to find out that that wasn't done. You know, I did have a chance to talk to Erica a couple of weeks ago, I think, when Officer Parker was up there concerning the issue. And she had told me, you know, and I see Erica's listening in, so maybe, Mr. Chairman, we could hear from her if you'll allow that. But she seemed to think things were better than they were. But at the same token, we just can't let this thing continue and continue and continue. We've been down that road before. It does not work. You have to draw that line in the sand and make sure people understand that. And I'm not trying to be mean to people that are moving out of town or mean to anybody, but rules are rules and they have to be followed. But I don't know if you could allow Erica to comment on the situation, Mr. Chairman, if she wants to.
Yeah, it's just sad, right? Because they could have came to us in January and said, hey, we have issues, we're going to be moving. We didn't do, you know, it's communication all the way through. And if there was communication, we wouldn't be having this discussion, I'm sure. Erica, would you like to say a few words? Once, oh,
Hi, sorry.
that's fine.
Honestly, I don't really have anything to say. You have pretty much, you know, narrated exactly what has happened at this point. They too, you know, they're just not good people. And that's completely my conjecture or in my opinion.
Sure.
I you know, if they're having some sort of, you know, the housing market is great right now. So what, you know, I'm sure they're not having a financial difficulty, unfortunately, with what their house just sold for. So I don't think that was a, you know, an excuse for not putting up a fence or for getting dog training. So I think Liz Bennett, you know, hit the nail on the head when she said they were just hoping that this would go away. And you know what? This was 4 altercations that their dogs had with my dogs. And that was the only complaints, you know, and my dogs, I had, you know, I'm a widow and I had a lot of financial hardships when, you know, they did not pay for the stay at the vets there were 3 of them, by the way. And that's all I can say.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it. And as she said, maybe the house is actually sold. I don't know for sure on that world. But yes, let's have the attorneys look at this if you guys don't mind. And this will be on the agenda in 2 weeks and we'll do something. Or you can just put me in charge of dealing with it. I don't care how you play the game.
Okay, next item.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Good night,
Thank
gentlemen.
you.
Resignation of school committee member Marie Seddon?
Maria
Sorry.
said,
Maria said,
All right. So we need a motion to accept that?
no, they resigned, an elected person resigns to the town clerk. So the school is initiating the provisions of the regional agreement to do the recruitment of potential candidates that the 3 of you and the remaining 4 members of the Southwick members of the school district will be meeting in a future meeting to interview candidates.
All right, so we're all set with that. That'll come
Yep.
in front of us eventually.
Yeah,
All right.
in front of you, yep.
Approval of the FY22 townwide landscaping services. Quote awarded and contract with 2nd and 3rd year extensions authorized.
Right, so you're just coming off a 3-year agreement. It went up for quotes again. You have the information in your briefing packets.
Yep.
And the apparent low bidder is Tynick. and it's in the $43,000 range. So you would be making a decision for the award of the quote and authorizing the three of you as members to sign the contract with them. And you'll reserve your right for a second and third year extension as you did in the previous services contract.
All right, so I need a motion.
Mr. Chairman, discussion?
Sure, oh, absolutely. What's up?
And let me preface my remarks that I think Tynick Landscaping has done a wonderful job for the town of Southwick. I think our properties have never looked better. But my question is this, Mr. Chairman. When I looked over the breakdown of the bid from Mr. Tynick, the DPW was the highest of all the contractors. And I'm wondering if that is because of the trimming of the trees that we no longer want done. And I'm
No, we
not trying to
told them not
pick
to
on
do this,
anybody.
Russ. We had informed them to do that going forward.
Okay, so that, we know about that then.
Oh, yes, that was made clear by,
That was the Arthur Pennell law, I believe.
right, members of other committees or boards have somehow chimed in on it. So,
Okay,
but it's,
just
but at the end of
wanted
the-
clarification, just
Yep.
clarification. Not trying to pick on them.
well, we can ask for about it again, but at the end of the day, the bid is the lowest net bid.
I appreciate that. I'm just asking a question, Mr. Steinhardt.
Yeah.
It is
with that,
interesting though, how you look at that, because how they came up with different numbers for each
Yeah.
area. It is
Yeah.
rather interesting. I agree with that, yeah.
Right.
And then in the end, for them to be so close for 3 bids, I thought that was great. Quite honestly, that
Oh, great vendors.
between 43
great-
and 45,
Yep.
you couldn't, that's great.
Three
And
good
I'll
local vendors.
add that I remember in the past, 3 years ago, we had, I think, some quotes that were over $50,000.
Yes, and I believe these are all down from those years, right? You're
Right.
absolutely right.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, Russ Fox will make the motion to approve Tynick Landscaping and award the bid.
Doug Mogul will second the motion.
All those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Doug Mogul and I.
All right. This is an interesting one. Next, review and discuss canvassing bylaw permissible times.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, over the last couple of weeks, between Robin, they have been encountering issues where individuals have been out canvassing in the neighborhoods, and they've been really doing it on late hours of the day.
They really have. I cannot get over some of those calls I heard, how late at night that they're actually knocking on houses. It's crazy.
Right, so I think, I don't see anything prohibiting a time limit here, but I was envisioning that, obviously that, notwithstanding what the bylaw says, whether or not there's an issue where there could be a time, a day of time where it has to stop, like whether it's 8 o'clock or 8:30, because in some instances, people have been banging on people's doors at their houses while they're trying to put their kids to bed. And they've been making all sorts of interesting statements to our citizens. So we have a role here, and we need to make sure that we take care of the public safety of our people when you have individuals that are coming into town that have a right to engage into this solicitation, but there does need to be parameters set on that.
Yes, and I know in the past when Mr. Fox and Mr. Didi comes forward for a hawkers and peddlers license, we list the times that we're open and that we're going to do business. But it looks like this stuff here that comes through, we're not a part of that.
No, what happens is the applications come through our office and the police usually check them out. And it's a very pro forma, issue where we have to do the background checks and all that other kind of stuff. Now, what will be different in the future going forward, based upon town meeting's adoption of that civil fingerprinting bylaw, in the future, these types of individuals will have to be fingerprinted.
So you believe we're allowed to set time on this and it won't affect
Well, this is.
Guy
what I-
selling flowers or the guy
It-
selling
it-
ice cream.
Well, I think this is the issue about going from door to places. So I'm just wondering whether or not you want to put a limit on that time so that we don't want to create an unintended issue here with other appropriately behaved businesses where you might have people going from place to place, knocking on people's doors at the wrong time of the day. So I'm not sure whether or not this will necessitate an amendment to the bylaw that maybe restricts it from residential neighborhoods.
Mr. Mogul, I see a lot of action with that forehead.
Well, I
like
think,
this.
I was just reading the bylaw itself, and it was right when Carl first came to town. This was accepted in 1975. So I imagine you're gonna have to go back to town meeting to have it changed, right? I'm not
Yes.
I'm not opposed to working on something in the interim that you could accommodate those suggestions, whether they're in the, because whether it's residential or not, you can't go by zone because you have residences in business zones or whatever, so you really can't just delineate by that. So I think you're gonna have to have a greater discussion, maybe in a work session in a future date, but I'm not opposed to having a time limit around it. I mean, as far as, I don't know what you want to call it, 8 o'clock at night, 6 o'clock at night, there should be some reasonable thing. And especially if it's being, not handled properly today, right? By folks, then we need to step in. So,
Yeah,
I
well,
think
it's not
that's
really an
possible.
issue with us. We're just administering what's on the books. The issue is whether or not individuals who are out taking possession of these licenses and opportunities are misusing them.
right, but I think under the bylaw, as I read this here, if they have the license, there is no time limit. So if they want to be a jerk and knock on someone's door at 10 o'clock at night, not that anyone's going to buy anything from them, but there's nothing you can do to say you can't do that, right? If you put something in place under chapter 138, then it's actionable by, as a civil, on a civil basis. Someone calls the cops come and tell the guy to move along. The hours stop at 8 o'clock or whatever we decide it is, right? And then you go from there, right? And there's a lot of it going on between, I know there's booksellers and solar sellers and all kinds of stuff, right? And I don't know what's the right answer for what the time should be, but there should be some kind of reasonable answer. And then I think this board and in consultation with Chief Landis will be able to come up with some kind of recommendation to town meeting to amend the bylaw.
Right. Well, I know Rhett's on this call, so maybe from a safety officer point of view, he could bring back our discussion here to the chief. And if we have a work session in the future relating to crafting any language edits to this, with counsel, that those other individuals can be part of that effort.
Absolutely.
Is it
So,
something as simple as a piece of paper that goes, because they come in for that permit anyways, right? They report to the police or our board.
that's correct.
So even if it's just and I know it's not legal, but even if it's a nice piece of paper that simply says 10 to 6 is the hours in this town that we would like you to do your door knocking. And yes, somebody can be a jerk and tell us differently down the road, but at least get the hint across. And so we make that something work down the road through the town.
Well, right, but before we edit that type of a document, going back to Doug's point, I would want to make sure that someone like Mark Beglane has looked at this and said,
Understood.
can't unless you edit it, or yes, you still can. You have the ability to do that.
But I think the chairman's point is, if we just say to people, these are our suggested hours that we'd like you to follow. We're not saying they're legal. All we're doing is suggesting these are reasonable hours.
And what hours would you like those to be? Because remember,
I think Mr.
Doug
D
just mentioned this is
suggestion of
gonna
10 to 6 would be great.
okay, and you don't think that's going to affect businesses?
I
don't
think
care. I don't want the residents getting tortured. Like if you listened to the scanner the other night, 2, 3, 4 times, right, Mr. Banish? They were pulling someone over that had Ohio or Utah plates that was that young man that was knocking on houses, I think 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And if he was told nicely, you know, 6 o'clock's kind of our cutoff in this town. It wouldn't hurt. And I'm sure he'd follow it.
Well,
I think that's a great suggestion from the chairman.
we can start using that time limit then.
It can't hurt, right? Let him come back and say, I only sell solar at midnight, Joe. That's when it's the best time. I don't know, but until then, you know, maybe they can do dog training. Who knows?
Okay.
Anyways,
All right.
I don't like this chairman spot. I'll tell you that. Okay.
51 more weeks to go.
Maybe not. All right. Okay. So anything else for new business, gentlemen? Mr. Fox, anything for new business?
Mr. Chairman, I apologize. No, at this time.
Wow. When Doug was chair, you wouldn't shut up. Interesting. Because you know I'm going to just tell you no anyways. Mr. Moglen.
I have no new business for the new chairman, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So only thing I have is we need to either do a work session. We need to figure out my select board's office. Now that I'm in charge, we're going to put this to rest. Whether we fill the position that might currently be open in my office, whether we don't, whether we look at HR functions like we've talked about down the road. So let's do something. Let's get a work session together or an executive session. I don't know where this has to go. Carl, tell me tomorrow where we have to go with this and we will set that up and get the ball rolling.
All right. Yeah, I'll have to confirm with Kim. Okay.
You know what I mean? We're not, you know, we've kicked the can long enough. So let's go.
Right. Well, one of them is a more immediate issue, and the other one, it's going to take time, as Doug said, to deal with the creation of the other position that town meeting separately funded and separately adopted as a different organizational unit.
Right.
Respectfully, I disagree. I think they're tied together. So I think a work session is in order. I think as we look at how the select board office is organized, you have to take that planning into account. So I think it's a great discussion we need to have.
Yep.
I put it off as long as I could, just long
Thank
enough
you.
apparently. And
Thank you.
so, yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. What else have you left me? I haven't opened up the book yet.
Oh, don't open your drawer.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. There'll be no cookies. I can tell you that.
No, look, I think
This banished took all the cookies, but anyways,
not anymore.
not anymore. Good. Look like all the weight you lost. Looks good. You did a great
No,
job.
I think that there's, that's a kind of thing that's gonna take a lot of work and effort to figure out how all the moving pieces of that work with some of the technology changes, some of the personnel changes, with some of the staffing changes in the office. Is you really have to take a look at that whole thing and see how it works out. And then you staff accordingly. I'd hate to do something staffing wise and then have the result of this discussion change what you already have done. So I think that's why and I'll be honest, I didn't, with everything else that was going on, didn't have the time to put toward it. So, and I know that you have just so much time.
Oh, yeah. Unbelievable.
But it really is, it is an endeavor, and it needs to have a fair shake.
Mr.
Appreciate it.
Steinhardt, tomorrow, can you email or text us some dates and availability times that we can look at and come up with a date? Okay?
Okay. Yep.
Something next week or the week after. Let's not wait till the end of summer.
And the only other thing, I did neglect one other thing, and I don't know if we're carrying it under old business. No, it's under old business. Carry on.
Okay. Cool. All right. So nothing more for new business. We're good. Mr. Steiner, did you have anything for new business?
No, my item was old business, sir.
All right. Town hall floater, do you have anything for new business? No? Wonderful. You're on my top layers. I want to check with everybody. All right. The select board requesting, under old business, the select board requesting a joint meeting with DOT regarding the construction of the bridge in Westville.
Yeah, that's something that Velas's office was going to put together, and they raised that discussion point when Doug and I had talked to them.
Okay, great. So that's another email you can send tomorrow asking Mr. Velas how that's coming along.
Yep. Okay.
I would appreciate it. And you can give him my cell phone if he would like to just reach out, and we'll gladly have that discussion to get that ball rolling. And the other one is road name change, Southwick Hill Road to Iron Horse Lane. Where are we with that?
Ben had sent an email to Kevin and I that he was going to be finalizing what was going to be needed for that in terms of the public hearing notice. There's all these different instruments you'll have to do when you hold the hearing in terms of the vote and a series of legal documents.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
regarding the next item,
yes.
can you please instruct the tree warden when they cut down those other trees that all three of us have been asked to dig into on North Lake, that they make it into paper so we can have additional 500 reams of paper so we get a copy of the green energy fuel efficient vehicle policy again for the next year in our packet? Thank you.
Hey, this is Mr. Fox's green energy at its best, okay? You know, if you roll that up, Mr. Fox said, you can start a little fire at your campground. That's what that was, green energy. Why cut another tree down when you have kindling right here, he said.
If I
I believe
burned
you
all
can
the ones,
buy these at Southwick floors rolled up. I think they're called Lincoln logs. If you check, what are they, $5, Mr. Fox? Green energy though.
if I burned all the ones that I've gotten in my packet, you would see the fire from space.
Well, if somebody would get us set up with these little tablets, we wouldn't need this goddamn paperwork anymore. But maybe that guy's got time on his hands now. I don't know. So, and I did fall in. I went and looked at those trees and I actually fell in the hole. And I couldn't get out.
Well, it was nice of them to get you out. I was down there waiting for the other two, and I was, waiting for them to fall on us that night in the rain. And I know Russ was down there. Every single selectman has been down there to look at these trees that are tagged for removal. So anyway.
That has got some progress. I did reach out to our DPW assistant director and our town engineer. There's been several emails, several phone calls, and there is some progress in getting, I think, 5 or 7 of them removed. So
Great.
it is moving forward, not as quick as me and you would like, or Mr. Fox, but there is some movement. Okay. Historic Commission vacancy.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, what?
Yeah, you skipped over the regional dispatch.
No, I wasn't. I got road name change and then historic. So regional dispatch, where are we with that?
So my understanding is that that's on the schedule for Westfield City Council LNO. I'm not sure of the date. I hope it's not tonight. It's either the 8th or the 9th, and I will endeavor to follow that through to see if they will adopt the amended MOA that was crafted between our town council, their town council, and our chiefs. And if they do adopt that with no changes from what we've agreed to so far, we would then be in a position to have this full board adopt the IMA and decide on a course of action if that's what this board wishes to do.
Thank you. Is next the historic commission, or am I missing something else?
You're good, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, no, seriously, I didn't.
But Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I don't think at this point, it's not just historical commission vacancy. We need to get the word out that we have openings or would like people to look at the different boards and commissions where we do appointments and get people involved in town government. So I somehow, I don't know whether we can do it through a code red call or through the news media, but we need to have people or work at something on our website. We need to get more people involved.
Russ, I think they look at us three and go, no, thank you.
Well, I've been,
I think Peter Currier, who's on the line here, certainly could help mention those different boards and committees that you think you're looking for people for.
I don't think that there's any, and to echo what the vice chair said, I don't think that there's any one board or commission, right? A couple of years ago, we asked everybody to kind of submit a letter of interest for their own spot and any other spot. Same thing goes as far as, if someone has an interest in serving on a board or commission, look through the list, send us a letter of interest or say, hey, I'm interested in any board or commission. I know it's been my, one of the things I've worked on over the last couple of years is to get some new folks, whether they run for office. We've been successful in having some people get elected to positions that they had, first time out running for office. The internet subcommittee, I know I recommended somebody to the moderator for consideration for finance committee. Anytime you run into someone, and especially if they corner you to yell at you and bitch at you, that's your opportunity to say, I hear you. Let's see what we can do. By the way, how do you want to help? And what board or commission would you like to be on in order to help solve your problem or someone else's problem? And, maybe you'll get a name or three. And it's worked for me so far.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Anything out there helps us, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm sure there's plenty of openings. We don't try to look as hard as we used to, but you're right. I mean, every other board, there's a spot.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And especially with all these changes with, there's anticipated changes to the open meeting law as far as being able to have remote participation and so on and so forth. That might make it easier for someone who's not in town every day, or, at convenient times that they could join a meeting once in a while via remote instead of in person if they're out of town or what have you. So I think it's even more advantageous than it's ever been. I realize people's demands on their time are high, right? We all feel that, but this is an opportunity for somebody to give back, and you can say, what kind of time can you give? And so someone who has a lot could do this, someone who doesn't, an hour or two a week, there's some place for them to.
Thank you. And the next up is the Russ Fox Memorial Medical Building vacancy.
We have not drafted that letter yet, Mr. Chairman, but we will be working on it this week.
I appreciate that. And you're right, we should have something in there,
And I see Mr. McMahon is on as well. I also charged EDC while I was chair. I was at their meeting and asked them, as part of economic development, right? That's an important piece to the character of a town and amenities that a town has, and having a medical facility and a doctor's office, I think, is kind of important. Not just kind of important, it's really important. So I added that to them in their selling of the town, and they happen to come across, they should be actively looking for a medical provider that would like to operate that turnkey facility.
Especially with it sitting there, right, ready to go.
Absolutely.
It's not like it's a build out.
No. Right.
Yeah.
And especially, and look at where it's situated, the potential client base,
Oh.
no pun intended, right? Within
Right.
100 yards in 3 directions.
Right, you're within a mile from a flower shop, a funeral home, and
No.
a senior living center.
I
What
didn't
could
say
go wrong?
destinations. I said, all right, moving on, carry on. Jeez,
Destinations.
we were doing so well.
Well, that's all we're doing now. All right, town hall boards and committee meeting reopening guidelines under update under OML. Anything?
We're just waiting for the governor filed pieces of legislation to address how things would be handled.
Yep.
Post COVID-19, and that is going to relate to issues to changes in the open meeting law, remote meetings,
Yep.
as well as a whole host of other things related to economics and businesses. So right now, the various state boards and committees are taking testimony from people. So we have not seen anything come out of that effort yet.
Okay, to be continued then. All right, anything else, gentlemen? for
Mr.
old
Chairman,
business?
before we move on from that, I read in the paper where some municipalities are starting to take different actions. Is there something this board can do in the interim? i.e. boards people have been calling me about meeting outside for their meetings, things of that nature. What actions can we start to take? I mean, everything's opening up. Masks are disappearing. We have one of the highest vaccination rate in the United States here in Massachusetts. Pretty soon we got to start acting like adults and start moving forward. So is there some actions that we can start to take now?
So and if I may, I think Council on Aging did it right? Even, and I saw Cindy today and teased her again that I wasn't criticizing her meeting during our meeting last. They had a meeting outdoors under the tent, They also had it on Zoom for those that wanted to participate remotely. Town hall was not officially opened yet, so in compliance with the open meeting law, they did that the right way. I think that can be done for other boards and commissions. My big concern is that we do it correctly, right? There's nothing stopping us from saying, look, town hall's open. We're going to go back to full in-person, no Zoom, no online. We're done, right? It's over. That's probably not going to be the way forward from us at a state level. But there's nothing saying that we could not have a hybrid meeting, even in the absence of having the equipment in place in a couple of our meeting rooms. We could have a couple of laptops, which we do have, to host the Zoom meeting and allow people to remote into said meeting. It won't be optimal, but it'll be in person for those that want to be in attendance and remote for those that don't. And then it is totally within the purview of this board, because we set the policy in the first place, to come up with some kind of hybrid solution, or, you know, all in either way, right? But town hall's open now. We can have in-person meetings as we would need. And I agree with Russ, we have to act like adults and trust that people are going to act like adults as far as, you know, the guidance such that we have it right now. But, you know, and, you know, Mr. Chairman, I'm not throwing this at your feet. I'll be glad to be the liaison for this because of, you know, what we've gone through so far. But, you know, we certainly, and we should also just try a couple of meetings too, you know, and see how it goes, right? Maybe even this board in a couple of weeks, have a couple of us in person, one remote, see how it goes. Invite, you know, and have it, maybe even have it in the auditorium instead, so you can spread out a little bit more in there. I don't, you know, whatever is the pleasure, but we, you know, and then we'll start seeing how it goes. I'm just more concerned that some boards and commissions will just jump all in and maybe actually accidentally violate the open meeting law such as we have it right now, and not have the Zoom part or not whatever if you're supposed to. And let's get all that understood and move forward.
Chairman, I think that's an excellent suggestion by the clerk. And I'd like to recommend that we do it for our next meeting and show boards how it can be done and done properly and legally. And I like the idea of having it in the auditorium. And if it goes well, let the other boards and commissions meet in the auditorium if necessary. You know, it's set up there.
Doug, can that happen before the next meeting? I thought the governor's order doesn't expire till the 15th.
I don't know the answer. That's why I said we have to figure
I
it all
think
out.
it can happen on the 14th for us, maybe the 28th, but the 14th is the governor's order. The emergency order doesn't expire till the.
I don't know. I think the governor's order has been amended to the number of people that may gather in one place, right?
Yeah.
If we have it on Zoom, first of all, look at the audience tonight, which was a stacked meeting, right? We had
Yeah.
maybe 30 people. Even that wouldn't exceed the number of people in person. But if you have Zoom, hell, we can have 1,000 people on Zoom. And
Yep.
and if we limit it, we put them in the other room with a laptop and go, here you go, Zoom away, right?
Right,
I
but the
think you
board
can-
members
you
have
can
to
do
be
it.
in the room. All board.
Oh,
members.
no. That's still untrue. I believe that we're allowed under the governor's order. That's what I said. Let's reconcile that. But Mr. Fox, I think we'll get this figured out. And if it's not this meeting, the next, that we'll get it figured out, that we can start.
Yeah, because I
Start doing some in
have the open meeting law guidelines from before the declaration. And so we never permitted it before it.
Understood. We had to adopt.
We've been relying on it up to this point in time, and now it's going to expire.
I think I don't read my email as carefully as I should on the town side. There's been a ton of communication regarding modifications to open meeting law that have been extended through September to allow the legislature to act. I believe we can have hybrid meetings in person and remote. And I don't want to belabor this. You and I can meet after and in the next couple of days and figure it out.
Thank you for doing that, Doug.
No
Thank you,
problem.
Mr. Fox. So yes, let's get together. Well, you two figure this out. If we can do the next one in person, we'll do it. If we have to wait another 2 more weeks, we'll do that too. But can we also reach out to all boards and commissions and see where their feelings are and where they want to go? Because you're right, Doug, some are going to jump in and not have the savviness of the Zoom at the meeting. You know, we're fortunate we have you, right? So this works well. No, but it does.
Depending who you ask, Joe, depending who you ask.
I don't
but
talk
I
to
think-
anybody, so far you're doing pretty good.
But I think you can, what I don't want to do is, I think we should send out the guidance like as an email to the department heads
Yes.
again to say, this is where we're at, this is what we're doing. So I don't want people jumping in and having meetings in the town hall and find out that we violated the open meeting law that way. Let's get
Right.
it. Let's send out the communication and continue to communicate. And within the next month or so, we can get more meetings in person and hybrid and see what the legislature does.
Right. I mean, I think we're fine to go personally as a select board, as long as we can still do Zoom. For those people that want to come in, I get it. But I do want to know where everyone else, where their feelings are, because you're right, some boards probably don't even want to meet and some want to jump right in.
Right.
So,
And, and we had it, and we've seen it all during the pandemic. At the first part of the pandemic, we had boards and commissions sneaking into town hall to have meetings, right?
Right.
And we had to put our foot down because they were violating the open meeting law. Then we taught some folks how to use Zoom. Then, I think like I said, Cindy's meeting a couple of weeks ago, technically was not per the selectmen's protocol, but she kind of got blessing from Tammy, and it actually was a good test of how to do it. And it could be a model to move forward and as doing it hybrid. But let's check, Carl and I will get together, figure out the rules, and then we'll communicate what those rules are to the boards and commissions, because, they love a vacuum, right? They will start
Oh, yeah.
making their own rules if we don't communicate what they are.
yes.
I see Lisa nodding.
Okay, thank you. Does that work for you, Russ?
Yes, it does, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Anything else under old business?
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead there, Clerky.
I have two things. One is, and it's kind of a good one, reminder, and we should carry this under old business. We need to get a little more organized on this. The August 6th Southwick night at the Starfires. I promised the young lady that I would continue to promote it. It's for Southwick residents. They're going to have some stuff for first responders and stuff like that before the game, and a Southwick resident will throw and or a public safety person will be throwing out the first pitch, yada yada. So I think it's an excellent opportunity to kind of bring the community together. We pushed it out as far as we could back when we started this because we didn't know where we were going to be in the pandemic. We're a little further along than I think anyone thought we would be at this moment. So August 6th is looking fantastic. Weather forecast is great. Let's go.
Awesome.
And then the second is to remind you gentlemen that the second part or continuation of the public hearing for Carvana
Tomorrow.
is tomorrow night at the planning board. There was very little back and forth during the first part of the hearing. There's been significant community discussion. Again, nature loves a vacuum or abhors a vacuum. So there's been plenty of back and forth on that, and it'll be interesting to see how that hearing continues, right? Tomorrow, obviously, it's an economic development activity for the town on a piece of property that's zoned industrial restricted, has been industrial restricted for, since zoning came into town. It's got its merits and deserves a fair hearing, which I know it'll get from our planning board. But I just want to brought that to your attention that will continue. That hearing is going to continue tomorrow night.
What time is that, Doug?
In actual time or planning board time?
Planning board
Because
time.
I don't even know what time they're on the agenda for, but they never run on time. So I usually show up at 7 and bring something to read, but I'll get back to you as to when it is tomorrow. I think
all
it might even be 7:15, but don't be surprised if they get to it at 10 o'clock.
All
Who
right,
knows?
Thank you.
Okay.
And God bless the planning board, right? And they've just been through this whole thing. They've had some marathon meetings. I'm trying to look up your meeting for you, but marathon meetings, they've been running almost regularly till 11 o'clock at night with their meetings, with the number of hearings they've had and everything else. So kudos to them for a true volunteer board. So anyhow,
Wonderful. Anything else?
7:45, sorry, Bailey Project special permit continued.
Thank you.
It happens at 7 though, right? The normal meeting starts at 7.
Starts at 7. They have a couple other special permits and A&Rs, so like I said, it's posted for 7:45. It could start at 10. Who knows?
Very active board lately. They got a
Yeah,
lot
and-
going on.
Kudos to them for what they've done, giving everything a fair shake and really having good deliberation back and forth, regardless of how they decide on things. They've done the homework and done the research.
All right. Are we going in executive session, Carl?
No, that's going to be next week, sir. That's when the park will be available to update. It's based upon your last negotiation process with that bargaining unit.
I love biting my tongue,
Right. So wait till next week.
You're the
Don't
chairman
say-
now, you have to.
Don't say anything. Just wait till next
Oh,
week.
it's all good. Yeah. Milk and cookies, whatever. It's all good. All right, guys. So I guess that will conclude our meeting unless there's anything else you want to talk about. Carl, you good?
Yeah.
Treating you well? Okay, good. All right, then. I need a motion to adjourn.
We will
Oh,
make
wait,
the
no, I
motion.
thought, Douglas, did you have something that you wanted to share with us or did you already do all that?
I'm good. After.
Oh, after. Wonderful. All right. So I need a
I will
motion to
make
adjourn.
the motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman. Russ Fox.
Doug Moglen, the clerk, will second the motion.
Wonderful. All those in favor, Joe DDI.
Russ Fox, aye.
Joe DDI. I said aye, so it's just the clerk.
Doug Moglen, aye. Didn't I vote already? Sorry.
All right,
We're
folks, that
adjourned.
concludes our meeting.